When we delve into the golden age of comics, which spanned from the late 1930s to the 1950s, we encounter the emergence of various iconic heroes. This period saw a surge in creativity with the establishment of many of the archetypes and narratives that continue to shape comic books to this day. And while male characters often dominated the spotlight, this era also saw the emergence of groundbreaking female characters who proved that heroics knew no gender. Iconic figures like Wonder Woman, Phantom Lady, and Miss Fury paved the way for the concept of female superheroes to lead storylines all by themselves from that point on, during such a rapidly booming phase for supernatural characters. But amongst all of them stood an equally significant figure, none other than the one who goes by the title of the Mystery Woman of the Jungle, Fantomah. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Fantomah? What is her backstory? Let's kick things off by getting to know the character under the spotlight today. Hailed as the Mystery Woman of the Jungle, Fantomah holds a truly essential title in comic book history as she preceded numerous popular female superheroes that we know of today. Making her debut in Jungle Comics issue number 2 back in February 1940, she emerged a full month before even The Woman in Red came out, a character that's often cited in discourse regarding early female heroes. That same issue of Jungle Comics was also released significantly earlier than the most iconic female superhero, Wonder Woman, who first appeared in late 1941. This early arrival places Fantomah as arguably the very first female superhero in comic books. It was created by the eccentric comic book artist Fletcher Hanks, who often used the pseudonym of Barclay Flagg for her stories. Fantomah was an entity of immense and almost omnipotent magical power. Her primary role was that of a guardian, who was also a mysterious goddess-like figure dedicated to protecting the wild jungles of Africa. She was not a protector, who was subtle with her ways, and they were rather bizarre and quite brutal, especially when confronting those who threatened her beloved jungle. Fantomah would use her magical abilities to lay out weirdly gruesome punishments, which is also a hallmark of Fletcher Hanks' creations, which also includes the equally peculiar superhero, Stardust the Super Wizard. One of Fantomah's most memorable character traits was her ability to transform. While she normally appeared as a woman with a thick head of curly blonde hair, you know, the type that usually defends African jungles, whenever she used to invoke her powers, her face would completely morph into a terrifying blue phantom in a way where her skin would turn blue and her features would distort into a skull-like appearance while still having her distinctive blonde hair. In this horrifying form, she could seemingly call upon any superpower whenever she needed to resolve a dilemma, much like the Spectre from DC Comics, whose powers also adapted to the narrative's requirements. The context of her creation is also important. Fantomah was published by Fiction House, a company that was known mainly for its pulp magazines that were rapidly expanding into the flourishing comic book market of the Golden Age. About a year and a half before Fantomah's debut, Fiction House had found significant success with Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. The popularity of Sheena, who also happened to be a strong female character set in a jungle, indicated a demand for similar adventures. Fantomah was, in a way, one of the knockoffs or inspired sets of work that aimed to play out this potentially successful formula, and this contributed to what would soon be recognized as a new genre called White Goddesses of the Jungle. While Fantomah undeniably possessed the key elements of a superhero, such as a distinctive appearance, superpowers, and a clear mission to combat evil, it was her unique and often unsettling methods that considerably made her a little weird. She didn't fit the emerging and more conventional superhero framework as smoothly as some of her contemporaries, such as the Red Panther, who also debuted in the same issue of Jungle Comics. But Fantomah's backstory evolved. While she was initially presented as a mysterious protector of the jungle, her origin was later expanded on in Jungle Comics issue number 27 in March 1942. In this revised origin, she was established as an ancient Egyptian princess revived to safeguard the jungle. This deeper lore, which will be discussed further in this video, helped solidify her status as a goddess and provided a more specific background for her numerous magical powers. In this later phase, she even dropped the title of Mystery Woman of the Jungle and rather became Fantomah, Daughter of the Pharaohs. Intriguingly, during this period, the emphasis on her absurd set of transformations and her unpredictable powers began to dwindle, and she became more and more aligned with the generic trope of a jungle girl, a stereotype that was popularized by Sheena, though she still retained some of her magical abilities like invoking the Egyptian gods. Regardless, Fantomah's importance lies not just in the significant mark she left as arguably the first female superhero, but also in her idiosyncrasies. Under Fletcher Hanks's pen, she was a bizarre and powerful figure who was fearless in delivering justice in a grotesque manner in a jungle setting. Her early stories are often cited for the surrealism they portray, which made her, in spite of being less mainstream, a fascinating character in the rich history of comic book heroines. Role of Fantomah in comics. Now, let's try to understand what her character's purpose is and the role she intended to play in the comics. Fantomah, the mystery woman of the jungle, shaped a uniquely weird niche into the early days of comic books, with her role significantly evolving under different creators and varying throughout her lifetime as a comic book character. Initially conceived by Fletcher Hanks, Fantomah was introduced as a mysterious demigod-like entity who was intensely dedicated towards protecting the African jungles, their inhabitants, and their fragile ecosystem. In her earliest adventures, penned by Hanks, Fantomah's purpose was clear, and that was to punish anyone who dared to exploit or harm her beloved domain. Her declared enemies were often driven by greed or scientific vanity, which ranged from reckless explorers and colonial encroachers to even the living mummy of an ancient Egyptian scientist. Fantomah's methods of justice were truly what set her apart and defined her initial role. She wasn't simply a crime fighter, but rather a force of nature with the objective to avenge, often delivering disproportionate and surreal punishments. The signature transformation of her face, as mentioned previously, along with her cruel punishment of those who threatened her jungle's people and animals, defined her role as an uncompromising and supernatural guardian rather than a conventional hero. However, with the departure of Fletcher Hanks from the series, there seemed to be a vividly pivotal shift in Fantomah's character and role. The writers and artists who came later on, often lacking Hanks's grotesque and creative flair, struggled to replicate the strangeness that defined her initial appearances. As a result, Fantomah's portrayal softened considerably. As a character, she transitioned from an almost omnipotent goddess to a more conventional jungle girl adventurer, which seems similar to characters like Tiger Girl or Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Instead of channeling raw and godlike powers from within, her magic often appeared to stem from prayers to various animals and deities in nature. Her role shifted from that of a terrifying spirit to a meager, intervening protector. She frequently became involved in mediating disputes between feuding indigenous tribes, confronting corrupt colonial authority figures, or even thwarting the schemes of greedy criminals from the Western world who aimed to exploit the resources of the jungle. During this very phase, her narrative also introduced companions, such as a loyal pet, a Black Panther named Fury, and a young orphan boy named Ken who briefly served as her sidekick. This adoption of typical adventure tropes further diluted her initially established, daunting persona. But the most significant evolution in Fantomah's role and identity came in issue number 27 of Jungle Comics, where the comic strip underwent a dramatic transformation and was retitled Fantomah, Daughter of the Pharaohs. This change marked a complete rediscovery of her forgotten past and established her as the queen of the lost ancient Egyptian civilization called Khafra, a direct descendant of the ancient pharaohs. The catalyst for this kind of revelation was just a mysterious stranger who hailed her as the legendary daughter of the pharaohs and went on to present her with a sacred costume. This costume was an Egyptian-style bikini with a matching headdress. With this change came an alteration to the visuals as well, as her signature blonde hair completely changed to red, which physically signified her new identity. During this phase, as the daughter of the pharaohs, Fantomah's role shifted dramatically to now turning into a ruling monarch. She abandoned Ken, as well as her direct and daily involvement in jungle affairs, to govern over her rediscovered kingdom, now often alongside her new constant companion, Fury, the Black Panther. While she still had her magical abilities, the source and nature of these powers were adapted to her new Egyptian heritage. Her magic now was specially derived from invoking the ancient Egyptian gods by aligning her powers with the royal lineage and the traditions of her lost civilization, which she supposedly belonged to. Her adversaries also changed as her character evolved to reflect her new self. Now, she no longer solely battled the external exploiters of the jungle, but rather faced threats that seemed to be more similar to a queen of the Hidden Kingdom. Her enemies often included the barbaric savages of the jungle that she once protected in her earlier role, and more prominently, disloyal members of her royal court who sought to seize her throne. Notable antagonists included the priestess of the vulture-headed goddess, called Gazia, who led an army of mummies. There was also the cunning Arabian adventuress called Sherry. This final iteration of Fantomah's role saw her completely embracing this newly discovered royal and ancient heritage of hers. This also played a key role in moving her far beyond her initial origins as the mystery woman of the jungle and culminating the whole series by becoming a more conventionally heroic yet powerful and revered queen. Powers, abilities, and personality of Fantomah. Now that we understand who, as well as what this character truly is, let's take a look at what makes her so special. Well, Fantomah stands as a true sensation in the early days of comic books, not just for her groundbreaking status as an early female superhero, but primarily for her incredibly eclectic and vaguely defined set of powers, abilities, and attributes. Under the vision of her creator, Fletcher Hanks, Fantomah was practically omnipotent and demonstrated a level of magical bravery that warranted her providing justice in the most absurd and brutal ways imaginable. Now let's delve a bit deeper into the chaotic nature of her true powers, along with the extent of her abilities and the unique ways in which she capitalized on them for her and the jungle's well-being. At the very core of Fantomah's capabilities was her immensely magical set of powers, which were often cited to describe her as an omnipotent character. This meant she could perform almost any feat required as per the story's plot, and this made her a truly formidable and unpredictable force in the jungle. Unlike many heroes with a particular set of powers, Fantomah's abilities were all-encompassing and specifically plot-driven, which allowed her to adapt and conjure whatever mystical solution the situation demanded. This undefined but incredibly dangerous ability intensely strengthened her character and often left readers wondering what crazy form of retribution she would unleash upon her enemies next time around. She embodied the goddess part of her early description and seemed to be able to call upon any superpower she might happen to need, very much like the Spectre, whose powers also manifested as per the necessity of the narrative at hand. But one of Fantomah's most iconic attributes was her ability to undergo physical transformation upon activating her powers. Her beautiful and rather normal human face would morph into an ugly and disturbing appearance as a result of her mystical powers, as her face turned into a blue-skinned, almost skeletal form. This transformation highlighted the duality of her nature, which comprised that of a protector who could instantly become a terrifying being out of nothing but vengeance, which underscored the severity and the weird nature of her character. This feature became a significant element of her early appearances, and it instantly conveyed the raw and wild power she truly possessed. But Fantomah's powers were more than just overwhelming strength. They were about delivering brutal punishments that perfectly showcased the morbidly creative imagination of Fletcher Hanks. Her methods weren't just about simple capture or defeat, they were rather aimed at psychological torment and often permanent alterations to her foes. She hoped to make them regret their actions through horrifying means. Let's look at an example from issue number 7 of Jungle Comics. A group of greedy diamond miners who were oppressing the natives faced terrifying consequences as a result. Fantomah used her powers to amalgamate all of them into one single man. This lone individual was then sent away to an unfound world, where he was then enslaved by hideous-looking monsters with green fangs. This fused man's suffering continued as he was then thrown into a pit of cobras and was finally absorbed into a wall by a giant hand. This multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and mind-boggling punishment perfectly encapsulates the imaginative cruelty and the sheer nature of her definition of justice. Her vengeance also extended to those who sought to exploit nature. She confronted a villain called Org, who was known to control giant spiders with his hypnotic drum. And then, there was also Professor Zomax, who was a scientist hoping to seek revenge on nature after being severely attacked by various animals, including a lion, a snake, a gorilla, an elephant, and even gnats. Like, come on, dude, after a while, it's definitely your fault. But Fantomah's punishments ensured these individuals faced the terrifying might of the very jungle they despised so much. Her approach to justice meant that mundane imprisonment was never an option, and instead, she had her foes face the strangest of fates imaginable. The very spectrum of Fantomah's specific abilities, though vaguely defined, was insanely broad. She often demonstrated her ability to fly by navigating the massive jungle effortlessly and confronting airborne threats. Along with that, her capacity for transformation wasn't limited to herself, because she could change objects, melt solid materials, and also cause humans to mutate into weird, unusual forms. An instance of this can be recalled when she turned 2 thieves into green, insect-looking humanoids before returning them to their plane. She also regularly displayed telekinetic and levitation abilities by being able to lift and move large or multiple objects and beings with her mind. But Fantomah's punishments often involved creative forms of exile and alteration. A scientist who had developed a serum that was supposed to increase intelligence in apes with the hopes of creating an army of beastmen in order to conquer the world, found his ambitions absolutely thwarted by Fantomah's powers. Similarly, another instance of a scientist who was intending to rule the jungle by hypnotizing giant reptiles was served justice after being stranded on an asteroid with his monstrous creations. Fantomah's powers could also operate on a grand cosmic scale, and a particularly vivid example involved a millionaire who bombed New York and released giant panthers onto the streets, intending it to become a lost city as part of his diabolical plan for humans to return to primitive means of living. But Fantomah responded by literally melting his planes and levitating the panthers, along with the millionaire, back to the jungle. She then proceeded to transform the millionaire into a caveman and forced him to adopt the primitive state that he desired to inflict upon others. However, Fantomah's attributes and abilities, like her role in the comics, saw shifts and evolutions over time, particularly after Fletcher Hanks departed from the series. In her earliest days, her powers were truly godlike and reflected her origin as a relic of ancient Egypt, along with her status as an omnipotent guardian of the jungle. During this period, her ability to simply call upon whatever superpower she might happen to need, as per the current plot of the story, made her unstoppable and consistently surprising with her abilities. As different writers and artists took over, her dependence on absurd transformations and the grotesque nature of her powers steadily de-escalated. Fantomah became similar to other Jungle Girl characters, with her abilities becoming more limited and said to stem from prayers to deities in nature or ancient Egyptian gods. While she still retained magical abilities, she lost some of the quality of anything goes regarding her powers that defined her initial appearances. Essentially, Fantomah's powers were a chaotic and unpredictable force, which acted as a true reflection of the wild jungle she protected and the imagination of her original creator. This would go on to make her one of the most memorable and uniquely powerful characters from the golden age of comics. Marvelous verdict! And that's our video for today. We delve deeper into the first female superhero to grace comic books, none other than Fantomah, a mystery woman of the jungle. From her debut in 1940 and throughout the character's lore, we come across various important facets of Fantomah, such as her origins and what her true backstory is, including multiple iterations from the Fletcher Hanks storyline, as well as the one that would ultimately define her comic book backstory, with her being hailed as the lost queen of an ancient Egyptian civilization. We also learned about her supernatural abilities and her eclectic set of ultra powers, along with her purpose and role as the valiant protector of the jungle that she calls her beloved home. Thanks for joining us. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and comment on your favorite female superheroes down below. We're always looking for ideas for new videos. Don't forget to subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more such content, and until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.